African Americans. He said, this is what I've heard, this is what I've seen. And when African Americans were out picking cotton, we were considered white trash, and we were picking cotton also. He specifically said, this is what I've observed. Now, if you talk to a lot of people, they may think, okay, that's a very small-minded or very narrow perspective, because what Phil Roberts has seen is only a microcosm of the entire United States. So that's one way a lot of people, especially, maybe from that community, may be looking at it and say that's just outright ignorance. You don't know.
Yeah.
Now, in looking at the other part with Glad, it seems like some of those comments or statements may have been hurtful. Whether or not he believes them or not, that's his right. But I think lessons learned from this is we know that we are all free to our opinions, but we do know that words can hurt and do hurt. Now, would Phil Robertson maybe do something differently in how he approaches or says things while holding on to his faith? I would imagine maybe so, especially after this week being in the eye of the storm. Can be a fun time for he and his family as well.
Yeah, and I sat here last week and I said, look, this guy believes in what he said, and he hasn't backed off. He held a Sunday school, or not. I keep calling it Sunday school. He wasn't saying this to kids, but he held a sermon and saying this is what I believe. But on the other hand, he represents that network, and the network came out and said, look, in no way, like you said, in no way do we agree with his comments, in no way do we support his comments. But I have various employers. I can't just go out in the street and start making comments that would not only put them in a bind, but put them in a corner and possibly jeopardize my employment. How do they relay that to this guy, a guy who they say, we love what you're doing, keep on doing it?
And also, too, Matt, we have to look at it as well. It really is interesting when you look at the response of the Facebook page, when they put the fan base out about whether Phil Robertson should be reinstated. It was shown that they got over 1 million likes.
Yeah.
A day. Now, that's something the network has to listen to, because we have to remember the network is a business, and they're about making money. And I must say, even though it may have been hurtful to a group, they've got to listen to their fan base, their customers, who are, whether it's a candy bar or clothing store, who's buying your product, who's paying for your existence.
Yeah.
So that's one part the network has to look at. Now, hopefully they are having conversations or whatever to keep the show authentic, and maybe even some other things to look at. But going back to what you mentioned before, I think that's something that GLAAD needs to look at as well. How do you look at, or what's important to you?
Yeah.
Addressing something that's hurtful, but understanding that everybody's not going to believe and accept what you do, as well as it be vice versa. But how do you deal with the hurtful comment?
Yeah.
Or comments, if that is important to you, versus is it important for everyone to believe what you believe?
Royalyn Reid, the website is thecmiteam.com, diversity and sensitivity expert. Thank you for joining us this morning on KGO.
Glad to be with you, Matt.
All right, we'll talk to you again. Taking your calls at 808810, 415-808-0810.